Hey there, my name is Anthony and welcome to Break the Twitch. Today I have my good friend Cait Flanders with me.
Hey.
She's a personal finance writer and she's gonna help me explore some ideas about a minimalist approach to money.
Break the Twitch.
As I mentioned, I'm really excited to have Cait here with me because we've both been writing for quite a while, Cait much longer than I, and we also have been working on minimalism and kind of just making more intentional choices overall. For me, it was Amazon.com and me hitting that one-click purchase button just a little, no, actually way too often. I was gonna say a little too often, way too often. And looking at the collective impact that had on my life, I realized that those small clicks and stuff were more of a physical twitch. So that's where the name Break the Twitch came from. What was it that kind of caused you to want to start writing?
Yeah, so I originally started my blog in 2011 because I was maxed out with almost $30,000 of debt, most of which was consumer. So there was a lot of mindless spending in there. Actually, I can totally relate to the Amazon thing because I was someone, like I read a lot of books, and I was someone who every time I would go to Amazon to buy one book, which was also a habit, right? Like I would hear of a book and I would immediately go, log in, put it in the cart, and then back before Amazon Prime, I would want to get to $25 so I could get free shipping.
Oh yeah.
So I would just add whatever the second book was, make that purchase. And I would love to tell you that I read 2 books every week, but I did not do that.
Yeah.
So that was where a ton of my spending and debt came from. And so I started the blog originally as a tool to help document my debt repayment journey. And it was great. It served its purpose. But after that, after I paid off my debt, which took me about 2 years, I found that I went right back to spending. A lot
It's
of
like
spending.
you hit your goal and then you let go of what got you there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It didn't take long for me to realize that after a few months of kind of writing, I want to save 20% this month. And I'd get to the end of the month and I would have saved 5. So it didn't take long for me to see that that was not a sustainable way of living. And I wasn't reaching any of my goals. And I wasn't happy with what my spending habits were and where my money was going. So then I decided to do a 2-year shopping ban.
A 2-year shopping ban.
It started as a 1-year shopping ban, but then I completed that and decided to do it for a 2nd year. And in that same time, I started embracing minimalism. I ended up getting rid of about 75, maybe even more, % of my belongings.
That's amazing. I'm not even sure what percent we've gotten rid of. We've played Min's game, which is where you get rid of things every day several times now, but that's an incredible amount of stuff.
Yeah. I remember actually visually looking at my car, which I'd filled literally from the front passenger seat on the floor to the ceiling to the trunk, full twice, and more smaller trips of stuff, and it all had to go. But so over the past 2 years, I was writing about the shopping ban and then writing about embracing minimalism, and now I just write about kind of simplifying everything, but money is still one of my favorite topics.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Even though I talk quite a bit about aligning our actions with our true values, I don't really talk about that in a sense of personal finance. I'm really curious, when it comes to minimalism and money or personal finance, what's maybe the first thing that you think of?
Yeah, so it actually reminds me a lot of like the decluttering situation that we've both been through, which is really just the first thing you need to do is sort of just take stock of what's really going on and kind of get the big picture. I think that that's one of the scariest parts of personal finance. It's the same way that it'd be scary to start decluttering because you get so overwhelmed. There's so much stuff, you don't know where to begin. So the problem is exactly the same way with money. And I think the first thing people need to do is just take stock of exactly what's going on. So that means logging to all of your accounts, writing down what the balances are, positive or negative, and really just looking at the big picture. And it is not about feeling good or bad about your situation, because I know it's especially hard. Like if it's negative, if you're in debt, it then gets even more overwhelming, but it's not about that. It's just looking at the numbers, looking at all the different accounts that you have, and being like, just making peace with that. So I would say it starts there.
It's kind of like opening the closet and just looking at the stuff in there, even though it may be intimidating, you just gotta look through it.
Or it may all fall out.
Or it may all fall out.
But no, you do have to do it. So I think that's the first thing. And even from that, I would say the next step is when you take stock of all the accounts that you have, is seeing which ones you can get rid of. And it's not just about paying off debt right away, but like how many checking accounts or savings accounts do you have that you don't even use, right? And so I try to have as few accounts as possible. So I have like 1 checking account, 3 savings accounts maybe, and my investments, and 2 credit cards. And that is enough. I have friends who have dozens of savings accounts. And like if that works for you, I'm all for that and do whatever works for you. But I think it's easier to have fewer accounts just to make a simpler budgeting process.
Okay, so it's literally just fewer things to track, to think about, to manage. That makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah.
I feel like even though I do a little bit of credit card churning stuff for travel benefits, it still makes it really like a lot to manage. And I do wish that it could be simpler. So that seems like a good place to start as well.
Yeah.
So now that we've kind of opened the closet and seen all that financial clutter, just all the different accounts you may have or different credit cards, loans, things like that, what's the next step? I mean, we know what we're looking at, then what?
Well, I think it sort of goes along with everything that you've been saying with Break the Twitch, is that you then need to make sure that your spending aligns with your goals and your values. I think that one of the biggest mistakes we all make, and I've been so guilty of this so many times, is that we just mindlessly spend without keeping track of where every penny is actually going. And I know that this isn't like the most fun topic or the most fun task to think about taking on. But tracking your spending is so important because not only will it open your eyes to where your money is going, but the next step to go with it is I do these like weekly check-ins where I look at all of the numbers and ask myself, did that align with my goals and my values? And if not, like next week, what can I start to cut out? So then I would say the next thing to do, just to keep things simple, is to do check-ins. So I do it weekly. I do it literally Sunday morning. I make coffee and I sit down. I log into all of my accounts. That is when I track my spending. And so it is then double checking what all the balances are on your credit cards. But again, it's just that check-in and then just going back to the question, like, did this align with my goals and values? Because there's all kinds of things you can do from there. You know, if you're unhappy with it, what's going to change next week? If it's too high, just even how can you lower it? Or if you want to wipe it out altogether, which is kind of a fun thing to do with your budget, but I'm weird, like to clear out the clutter, then you go from there.
Okay. How exactly is someone supposed to know what it is that feels good? What's the thing that is in alignment with what they want, right? So is that coffee that really wakes me up in the morning better than not drinking that? Or how do we figure that out?
Well, I think that's where, like, number one, it's going to sound like the weirdest piece of advice, but honestly, my number one piece of advice that I usually give people about money is to trust your gut. Like, trust your gut with every financial decision and financial transaction you're about to make, because I honestly feel like there's a little something inside of you that before you're about to hand over a card or cash, you know if you should be doing it or not. I'm serious.
No, totally.
Right? And even if it is just like, oh, I shouldn't really spend $10 on breakfast today and a coffee, but I'm going to, but there's still something in you. It's like, you don't really even want to. So why are you doing that? So really just trusting your gut. As for how that aligns with your goals and values, or even knowing what your goals and values are, I would then bring it back to the kind of idea that all minimalists have their own goals and values, right? And so everyone's journey looks different and everyone's minimalism experience looks different in my eyes, right? So the things that I value, which, you know, I've kept some of my books and stuff like that, whereas, you know, I have friends who would maybe keep more of their clothes. Everyone's are different and that's so personal. And so that's actually one of my favorite things about personal finance is that it's personal.
Yeah.
So, you know, everyone's numbers and decisions are going to look different. But that's kind of the best part of it. And so there's no judgment in that. It's just figure out what makes you happiest, what you're okay with spending money on, and then kind of get rid of everything else.
That makes a ton of sense to me. It's funny because I talk about the same thing, but with the things we do every day. And obviously spending money is an action, but in order to kind of get the small tasks and the things that we accomplish every day that build up to a significant amount of money or a significant growth in our lives, you know, you really do have to just kind of set them up and work towards it in a way that feels right.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So at this point, we've taken stock of all the different accounts we have, credit cards, checking, savings accounts, making sure to close any that we're not using anymore that might distract us from being able to focus on the core process of checking in every month. And then tracking all the things we spend money on, making sure that those expenditures align with our values and the way we want to be spending our time and money. Speaking of time, for me, it's been a really interesting journey in terms of discovering that time is kind of my most valuable resource. So in terms of thinking about time, how would a minimalist approach that with money?
Yeah, I mean, I think that says it right there. Just, I think that, after our basic needs are met, something that minimalists do really well is know that time is the most valuable resource. Money is not. So before making any spending decision, before handing over the money for anything, just saying, do I actually want to spend this money right now? Or would I rather value the time it would take me to earn that money all over again?
Well, with that, I think we've come up with some great ways that minimalists manage their money. Just want to say thanks for sharing your ideas with us. And where can people find you online if they want to find out more?
Yeah, I'm at caitflanders.com or at Cait Flanders on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram.
As always, thanks for your time and attention, and we'll see you in the next video.